Interesting development in the NBA playoffs. The road teams are 5-0 in the second round of the playoffs. Indiana, New York, Denver, and Golden State started their second round series with road wins. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
When the flames subside, who ensures that the stories endure? At KBLA Talk 1580, we're committed to preserving the voices that shape our community. We know people have short memories, and as long as this Black Talk radio station is on the air, we will not let Altadena be forgotten. We are honored to announce that the Altadena Historical Society will officially archive our recent town hall alongside every episode of Conversation Live Decolonizing with James Farr. This is the show of record, the definitive source for tracking Altadena's roots, resilience, recovery, and reunion. These stories will now live on for students, scholars, researchers, and journalists seeking truth and legacy in the months and years to come. Because history isn't just made, it's honored, it's recorded, and it's passed forward. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
Live from historic Limerick Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley, and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit thetavismiley.com. That's thetavismiley.com, or wherever you get your podcast, and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today in our second hour.
I want you to know that this is the happiest day of my entire life. As you all must know, I have had a very long life, and I'm 60 years old. The results today of seeing you all together, you're together as salt and pepper, just as you should be, just as I've always wanted you to be, and peoples of the world have always wanted you to be. I'm glad that in my homeland where I was born and love and respect, I'm glad to see this day come to pass. I want you to know also how proud I am to be here today, and after so many long years of struggle, fighting here and elsewhere for your rights, our rights, the rights of humanity.
That was the American-born French dancer and civil rights activist Josephine Baker speaking at the 1963 March on Washington. Interestingly, Josephine Baker was all over the red carpet at the Met Gala earlier this week, celebrating black dandyism when several black stars honored the black fashion icon who was the first black woman to star in a major motion picture. In hour two today, history professor Hanna Diamond takes us inside her real-life spy thriller, Josephine Baker's Secret War, the African-American star who fought for France and freedom. We'll talk Josephine Baker today in our second hour. In our third hour, Professor and Hope Chair in Peace and Health at McMaster University, Dr. Ingrid R.G. Waldron, marks Mental Health Awareness Month and 5 years, believe it or not, since the murder of George Floyd on the 25th of this month, with guidance today for navigating racial trauma and decolonizing our healthcare system. Her new text is titled, From the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter, Tracing the Impacts of Racial Trauma in Black Communities from the Colonial Era, that is, to the present. Look forward to that conversation in our third hour. 2 spirited hours in front of us, say nothing of the first hour. In a moment, we'll spend this hour talking politics with our regular contributor, author, and professor of African American Studies at UCLA, Marcus Anthony Hunter. Before I get him on the line, though, first, a quick update from yesterday. Funny, but really not so funny. So you recall yesterday in our first hour, Connie Rice was here, another regular contributor. And near the end of our conversation, we were joking and laughing about the fact that Donald Trump had announced yesterday that he is considering reopening Alcatraz. So Guantanamo isn't enough. Now he wants to open Alcatraz. So Connie and I sort of joked yesterday, as you'll recall. He probably saw the Clint Eastwood film Escape from Alcatraz. He doesn't read anything. He just watches television all the time. He probably saw the old movie Escape from Alcatraz, and that's what prompted him to make that ridiculous comment about reopening Alcatraz. Well, Deadline is reporting today that Trump's Alcatraz announcement came the morning after the Clint Eastwood prison classic was on television. You can't make this stuff up. Connie and I joked about that yesterday. He probably saw Escape from Alcatraz, and it turns out apparently he did. And so the next day he wakes up and makes a statement, wants to advance an executive order to reopen Alcatraz. Again, you cannot make this stuff up. We were just joking about that yesterday. Turns out there's some truth behind the laugh. That Alcatraz had just played, Escape from Alcatraz had just played the night before. So there's that update. And when we come forward, I want to play, as a matter of fact, let's do it now, Miles. I want to play the clip yesterday. This also broke while we were on the air yesterday. Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, was in Washington yesterday at the White House. And you'll recall, Connie and I talking yesterday about the ways in which Donald Trump had humiliated and embarrassed not just Donald Trump. You recall J.D. Vance jumped in too. So the president and vice president humiliated Mr. Zelensky of Ukraine when he was in the Oval Office. So that's the way Trump moves. So they invite you to the White House, and then he just, smashes you, crushes you, humiliates you, embarrasses you when you sit in the yellow chair next to him. So Carney was in the White House while I was on the air yesterday, but here's the sound now of what I was referencing when I said Donald Trump is at it again.
As a real estate developer, I'm a real estate developer at heart. When you get rid of that artificially drawn line, somebody drew that line many years ago with like a ruler, just a straight line right across the top of the country. When you look at that beautiful formation when it's together, I'm a very artistic person, but when I looked at that beauty, I said, that's the way it was meant to be. I think, it would really be a wonderful marriage because it's two places that get along very well. They like each other a lot.
Well, if I may, as you know from real estate, there are some places that are never for sale.
That's true.
We're sitting in one right now, Buckingham Palace that you visited as well.
That's true.
And having met with the owners of Canada over the course of the campaign last several months, it's not for sale, won't be for sale ever. But the opportunity is in the partnership and what we can build together.
Never say never. I've had many, many things that were not doable, and they ended up being doable, and only doable in a very friendly way. But if it's to everybody's benefit, Canada loves us and we love Canada. That's, I think, the number one thing that's important. But we'll see. I mean, over time, we'll see what happens.
I love that line. I have met with the owners of Canada, and I can assure you that Canada is not for sale, not now, not ever. Trump is just irascible, I digress for now. We'll get it started with Marcus Anthony Hunter when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
yeah, la conga, yeah, la conga,
Generous listening.
Charitable listening.
It's why everybody wants to talk to Tavis. The conversation continues when we come forward.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. Think about your mentors and idols, the people who inspire you the most. While it may look like they have all the answers, they don't. But they do know when to ask questions and seek the support they need. In a world that glorifies hyper-independence, it's easy to forget that we're all better with a support system. Therapy is a great way to find a consistent source of support in your life, so you can break free from the outdated belief that seeking help is a sign of weakness. BetterHelp has experienced therapists ready to help you with challenges ranging from anxiety and depression to relationships and stress. It's convenient, too. You can join a session with the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. You can even send your therapist a message anytime something comes up. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/ABCRadio today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ABCRadio.
You really about to do it? 40 acres in the mule. This is bigger than the music.
You really about to do it?
Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
Who among us doesn't like black music? But Kendrick is right. This moment is so much bigger than music. These are serious times. We've got serious problems, and we need serious people who understand that slogans are not solutions. When you want substantial and sober analysis about things that matter to you and the ones you love, this is where you turn. We're KBLA Talk 1580. And we've got your black.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
The Comedy Connection series featuring KBLA's Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, and the alpha male of comedy, Ray Grady. We're going to transform relationship disasters into stand-up material live at Inglewood's Miracle Theater on May 31st at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. My clinical team will disclose all of your dating woes, while the alpha male of comedy, Ray Grady, has hand-selected, supremely talented comedians to roast all of our tragic relationship choices. I dare you to bring your ex's phone number, because Ray, he's going to text it live, and the crowd will be sourcing emojis. Tickets are moving swiftly, so don't hesitate to grab yours at themiracleinglewood.com before I diagnose your dating history as a pre-existing condition.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Au-delà des mers, là-bas sur le ciel clair, il existe une cité au séjour enchanté. Et sur les grands arbres noirs, chaque soir, vers elle s'en va tout mon espoir.
We're celebrating Josephine Baker today in our second hour, so stick around for that. Going to be an amazing show today, and we're starting in this first hour with Marcus Anthony Hunter of UCLA. A lot to cover with Marcus in this first hour. He's on the East Coast. We'll talk about why he's there. The papal conclave has just begun. Maybe the next pope is an African. We'll talk about that and a great deal more. Marcus, how are you today, sir?
I'm blessed and highly favored. How you doing, King Tavis?
Man, if I complained, I'd be an ingrate, and I'm delighted as always to be in conversation with you. Let me start with the two things I mentioned earlier. One kind of funny, the other not so much. Well, actually, they're both funny, actually, to me. But what do you make of this news that Trump makes this announcement yesterday about reopening Alcatraz, and we find out he was watching Alcatraz the night before, the Escape from Alcatraz film with Clint Eastwood?
It's giving Robin Island,
Yeah.
like I'm like, I guess you gotta laugh to keep yourself from, doing other things to yourself because you can't write that, like, it's like, that is wild and crazy.
Yeah, you can't make it up. You can't make it up. And again, as I said yesterday, Connie and I were just laughing about it, making, saying something silly and humorous, and it turns out to have been real. That's the scary part. Then I played the clip, as you heard, of Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister in the White House yesterday. And I reiterate once again, Trump just has this way of insulting persons face to face. I think he gets off on that. But I love the way Mark Carney shot back at him. Mr. President, I have spoken to the owners of Canada. It is not for sale, not now, not ever. Of course, Trump, never to be outdone, responds, never say never. But what do you make of the way that he just maltreats these world leaders who he invites to the White House?
Yeah, there are two things that are from pop culture I think are relevant. The first one is the show The Apprentice, where if you have watched the show, and I encourage people who have not, just to check out some of the highlights because it is line by line, beat by beat, the same exact thing. Like you bring them into the boardroom, he's sitting in one seat, he has his left-hand man saying one thing, the right-hand man saying another thing, and then before you know it, you already know as an audience member, it's not looking good for the person who's been brought into the room. It's just really, really giving Celebrity Apprentice. The other thing that I think is interesting, just on, buying and selling Canada and on the commentary of Canada's not for sale, I spoke to the owners. I mean, that made me think a lot about the indigenous and native people. I don't know if Carney was actually talking about them. Like I think he's making a general statement, from one colonizer to the other one, this colony is settled. Leave us alone,
Yeah. Nope, powerful point, powerful point. To your point about the Celebrity Apprentice, I hadn't thought about it in that way, but the way you frame it is beautiful. And that's exactly what's happening. I mean, it's the theater of the absurd, the theater of the ridiculous, but I hadn't thought about it in the way that he behaved and showed up on Celebrity Apprentice. That's really what this is. He invites these people here, and he just does his thing for the cameras, right?
Absolutely. The only thing that's missing, he wanted to say it to Zelensky. Yeah, when they start going to the ramble, and then this, he's you're fired.
You're fired.
Like that's the only thing missing. Everything else is exactly on point.
Yep. Which raises another question as to why, and again, no naivete here. If you get invited to the White House, I guess you show up. But I don't know why a world leader at this point would subject himself or herself to that kind of mistreatment.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's also a good question why Bill Maher is receiving better service treatment than world leaders. I mean, there's something to be said for a comedian who hosts Real Time on HBO having the red carpet treatment compared to world leaders who are currently fighting wars.
Yeah. I wonder what this does to our standing. Every time he does this, the world sees it, not just the world leaders who get humiliated and emasculated in front of cameras. But I wonder what this does to our standing in the world, or whether or not people around the world see it as a TV show as well.
Yeah, it's a good point. And this leads to the other point about pop culture I was going to mention. I may or may not have shared this with you, so don't judge me, Tavis, but I am a part of the WWE universe where Donald Trump is a Hall of Famer for famously going billionaire for billionaire with Vince McMahon back in the day, and he's in the Hall of Fame. And why that's relevant is because in WWE right now, John Cena, who is considered the greatest of all time, now 17-time champion, has done what they call in wrestling, go heel. And part of what I see Donald Trump doing is picking up on that wrestling work of going heel. So they did a PLE in Canada, and how they always start is with the national anthem, and then they did the Canadian anthem. When the national anthem came on in Canada, I believe they were in Toronto, the Canadians booed it so bad that the actual singer, who, you never want to be booed while you're singing, she just starts trying to speed through the song because it's strong boos. And then when they get to "Oh Canada," they're like ripping and roaring. And so I see part of this is a play on the art form of wrestling and going heel. where he, in Donald Trump's narrative, we've been the face, the baby face, saving everybody, helping everybody, paying for everything. And now he's turning the page and going heel and making it so that you're calling out all of the people. You're saying how you've been used and abused. Everybody needs you. You don't need them. So it's giving wrestling, for me.
First of all, no judgment around here unless you're Donald Trump going out. Unless you're Donald Trump targeting black people, I have no judgment.
Hey.
And for that matter, when I was a kid, I couldn't get enough wrestling. I couldn't get enough of it.
You already know.
Yeah, I love it. So I ain't mad at you about that. No judgment there. But it is fascinating to see every time someone shows up in the Oval Office. The way Donald Trump just again humiliates. I can't think of a better word. Just humiliates.
Wipes the floor with them.
Exactly. That's exactly. Yeah. Wipes the floor with them. And so, but they keep coming. So if that's what you want, if that's what turns you on, then come on to the White House and let Trump make you look stupid. Make you look stupid. Right. Yeah, victimize you in the White House. But anyway, I just thought that Canadian thing was interesting because again, the news broke about that yesterday when I was on the air. All right, some other things I want to cover in the hour that I have with you. Let me jump, I think, to this papal conclave. That's the big news of the day. The papal conclave is underway. And I'm only fascinated about this to the extent, as I've said many times, I'm fascinated. I saw some numbers the other day, and I think I helped drive some of these numbers up because I've said more than once on this program, if you really want to understand what's about to go down, watch the movie Conclave. It will give you a good sense of what's about to go down inside the Vatican as they lock this place down until they get to a plurality and choose a new pope. So again, if you've not seen Conclave, now's a good time to go see it. I don't have any ownership stake in it. I wish I did because I know the numbers have been through the roof with people checking out this film. Even the New York Times recommended seeing Conclave if you want to understand what's about to happen inside, again, the Vatican. But that said, I'm really fascinated by this now. I am no Catholic, but I'm fascinated by it now because there are a number of African cardinals, the greatest number of African cardinals ever, who now get a chance to vote on the new pope. And as you recall from the movie, don't want to give it away, but there was in fact an African cardinal in the film who was in the running to become the pope. No spoiler, not going to tell you what happens, but there is an African American in the running to become the pope in the movie Conclave. That's a film. This is real life. And there are, again, a significant number, the largest number ever of black African cardinals who are in that room and could potentially, I guess, be the next pope. I'm not sure I see that happening, but what do you make of the thought, the idea even, that the pope could be an African, a black African?
Yeah, I mean, my mind always goes to our great ancestor, Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
Yes.
How wonderful it would have been, and I'm sure he is playing a role from the heavens to even have this conversation go. From what I've seen, a couple of the contenders, the main one I've seen is Cardinal Peter Turkson of Ghana, but then there's also Robert Serra of Guinea, and then Jean-Marc Aveline of Algeria. So, I mean, I don't recall in my lifetime hearing any black names mentioned, let alone there being three. But a lot of it has to do with how vibrant and growing Catholicism is in Africa, which is fascinating in and of itself.
Yep. What do you make of that? It is practiced rather conservatively, the religion that is. I've been to Africa many times, of course, as have you, I suspect. And what I've denoted or picked up on about the way they practice it, it's very conservative. And so just because you have a pope that happens to be a black African does not mean that pope is going to continue in the more progressive direction that the last pope was moving the church in, Marcus.
Yeah, I mean, we can put in two words right there, Ben Carson. Just because you heal hearts and then you get in charge of HUD doesn't mean we're going in a progressive direction. So that is a point well taken. I do think optically what's interesting is in a backdrop where Donald Trump AI'd himself as the Pope and is canceling DEI. The actual Catholic Church is practicing at least some performative version right now of DEI, which is really, really interesting to hold side by side.
Yeah. What is fascinating is that the majority of the cardinals, a good number of them, rather, I should say, maybe not a majority. I don't have the number exactly in front of me, but I've made this point once or twice on this program since the Pope passed away. But a significant number of the cardinals who are voting for the new Pope were appointed by the last Pope. And so if you assume that he appointed people that believe in his progressive direction for the Catholic Church, and maybe you end up with a new pope who will continue again in that particular direction. But I repeat, just because you get a black African pope, if that were to happen, does not necessarily mean we're going to continue in that progressive route, given the way that Catholicism is practiced far more conservatively on the continent than it is certainly in this country, and I suspect in other places. I'll leave it to my handy and trusted producers to find the data, a point that I was looking for a moment ago. It is true that since the Pope passed away, Pope Francis, the film Conclave has spiked 283% in viewership. 283% in viewership. I ain't mad at them, and as I said, I ain't mad at Ryan Coogler.
I know that's right.
Yeah, I ain't mad at him, man. He's killing it with Sinners, and fascinating, as you'll recall, the movie Sinners came out the same time as the Pope made his transition. So you got Francis.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
You got Pope Francis making a transition. Yeah, the Pope is moving on. And Sinners is the #1 movie in the country. So I digress on that particular part. That's the papal conclave underway literally as we speak. I only got 2 minutes here now. Let me start this conversation with you, Marcus, and we'll continue when we come forward. But I know that you have a little birdie told me you're on the East Coast for a big reparations meeting.
Yeah.
And this meeting, let me just set this up. This meeting has been called by it's Cory Booker's meeting. So Senator Cory Booker presents a congressional briefing, Why We Can't Wait. That's the Kingian frame, right? Why We Can't Wait. Advancing reparative justice in our lifetime. Again, it's a congressional briefing called by Senator Cory Booker of 25-hour speech fame. And it's titled, Why We Can't Wait, Advancing Reparative Justice in Our Lifetime. Now, I raise this because I want to talk about what this means, that Cory Booker has called this meeting. Marcus is there, many other. I'm looking at this flyer of all these notables who are going to be there and speaking alongside Marcus Anthony Hunter. And there's some big-name people who are going to be in person and speaking virtually, not just at this congressional hearing, but there's also a national reparations rally taking place as well. All of this, of course, in Washington. So there's a rally, and there are these hearings. What I found fascinating, and I thought immediately about you, Marcus Anthony Hunter, because I recall one of our prior conversations, us talking about Cory Booker giving the 25-hour speech, but not being so progressive in his politics. His speech was far more progressive than his voting record. And I ain't trying to hate on Cory. I like Cory. But when you look literally at his moderate voting record and listen to what he said in that 25-hour speech, and there's a disconnect there. Say nothing of the fact that Marcus and others have criticized Cory Booker for his stance on Gaza. He has not been where many people want him to be on that particular issue, but he's advancing this conversation about reparations. I ain't stuck on stupid. I'm not naive. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So because you're right on one issue and you're wrong on something else doesn't mean that we're going to throw you out with the bathwater. But it is fascinating for me that Cory could be missing it on the Gaza question, which I know matters to Marcus Anthony Hunter, but apparently calling a congressional briefing on reparative justice. I'm going to let Marcus Anthony Hunter make sense of all that for me when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Why does Tavis say, when we come forward?
Because he's not going back.
And you don't have to go back either. Forward ever, backward never. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Tensions flared outside of a Grand Rapids, Michigan courthouse as protesters clashed during jury deliberations in the trial of ex-officer Christopher Shore, charged with killing a black man, Patrick Luoya.
I think that they are really weighing the options and the facts, and I really, truly hope that they come up with something soon.
The jury is deadlocked, but was told to keep trying. One person was arrested. Jurors are in deliberations today in the Tyree Nichols murder trial. 3 former Memphis officers are charged with beating him to death back in 2023. That was caught on video. None of the former officers testified. And the Lending Tree survey shows 77% of parents say raising kids is more expensive than expected, with nearly half having fewer children due to costs. The average cost to raise a child now is nearly $300,000, up 36% in 2 years. A $5,000 baby bonus is reportedly under consideration. Get BIN News Now, on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
For victims of drunk and drug driving, Our grief is unique, but you are not alone. You always have a place at MAD. Call our 24-hour victim helpline at 877-MAD-HELP or visit mad.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Another date for Lakers Nation to circle on your calendar. August 2nd is the day Luka Doncic becomes eligible to sign a 4-year extension worth $229 million. The Lakers are not obligated to give Doncic an extension. Doncic has 1 year left on his current contract that averages $53.7 million. The Lakers might want to see how Doncic is handling his offseason conditioning program before agreeing to give him an extension. One of the reasons Doncic is with the Lakers is because the Dallas Mavericks did not feel comfortable giving Doncic a super max extension worth $345 million. If Doncic was still with Dallas, he would have been eligible for that deal on August 2nd. Interesting development in the NBA playoffs. The road teams are 5-0 in the second round of the playoffs. Indiana, New York, Denver, and Golden State started their second round series with road wins. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. With so many shows on our station weekdays and weekends, it's hard for me to keep track of all the guests who are actually in studio on any given day. I wish I'd known in advance that LADA Nathan Hochman was coming in studio for a recent interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Curran Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear, neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, and at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Curran Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. DA Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in,
but we're okay with that.
You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
Ne me dis pas que tu m'adores, embrasse-moi de temps en temps. Un mot d'amour c'est incolore, mais un baiser c'est éloquent.
It's a celebration of Josephine Baker today in our second hour. Stay tuned for that. We continue in this first hour talking politics with Marcus Anthony Hunter, author and professor of African American Studies at UCLA. Glad to have him on our roster of regular contributors. So I know Marcus to be passionate about any number of things, but nothing I think is he more passionate about than reparations. He, in fact, has written a best-selling book called Radical Reparations, Healing the Soul of a Nation. I highly recommend it. Radical Reparations, Healing the Soul of a Nation. And so I mentioned a moment ago that there are two big events happening around the issue of reparations. Never mind that we are in the era of Trump 2.0. What can actually happen in this moment, I'm not so sure. I'll let Marcus unpack that as he sees it in a moment. But there is a congressional hearing that's been called by Cory Booker, senator out of New Jersey, of course. Once again, of 25-hour speech fame, or record-setting 25-hour speech, surpassing Strom Thurmond. But he's called a congressional hearing, a congressional briefing, titled Why We Can't Wait, Advancing Reparative Justice in Our Lifetime. That's next week, Tuesday, May the 13th. And then next Saturday, May the 17th, there's a huge national reparations rally. Of course, all this happening in Washington. So let me start, Marcus Anthony Hunter, by getting your take on your read on Cory Booker. I offered my analysis a moment ago, and I like Cory, but it's interesting to watch how he moves. What say you about that part first, and then we'll go a little deeper?
Yeah, I think about a lot of our Democratic leadership as an opportunity for malleability because the party itself is in distress, rebuild, devastation, all of these things. And traditionally what has happened is because they usually have been in power, our issues like reparations, anti-poverty, child care, we can go down the list, have often been things that get absorbed into the Democratic platform once it's been created, or absorbed into the members' portfolio once they already have set what they have. In this case, one of the things that's been happening, especially in our conversations with Senator Booker, is how can you use that opening salvo where everyone focused on you for over a day and what you had to say as a way to be in front of conversations, especially about reparative justice, versus in reaction to. For example, we've heard now out of the Trump administration the use of the word reparations, which, by the way, the Biden-Harris administration almost never used the word, so that's interesting. But the Trump administration is using the word, but misusing it as a way to say, we're going to give insurrectionists some money, people who have felt like DEI was against them, we're going to give them reparations. And so part of the push for me is getting in front of people misusing and misunderstanding the word, because we still haven't had a national education about what reparations means in the United States. And this briefing is a big part of that.
Unpack your critique of the Biden-Harris team not so often even using the word reparations.
Yeah, I think it begins from what my mom always taught me, false evidence appearing real.
fear. There was this idea that the minute you roll out something or you mention something, there was fear of lawsuits. And some of that fear was founded in the sense that we heard about lawsuits happening against activities in Evanston, against activities in Baltimore. The Fearless Fund, shout out to the founders there as being one of the most prominent examples. All they wanted to do was, center Black women entrepreneurs, through venture capitalism, and that was sued. And so that was always the fear. The interesting thing, though, that now that we're living in this simulation is the fearlessness that the Trump administration has around lawsuits. And also, as the courts keep coming down and saying, this is wrong, this is right, we're not really seeing enforcement for these things that they're saying are right or wrong. So this brings back to me this idea that if we move forward and we continue in a way that starts to understand, one, what is this fear of reparations about? Two, if we move fearlessly, then maybe we can do more through executive power and through legislative power should the hands of power change. As we know in American history, it does come to pass.
I want to come back to this notion of Trump's fearlessness in just a second, but tell me whether you truly believe that there is any reason to believe that there will be advancement on this issue of reparations in the next 3.5 years while he's in the Oval Office.
I think that it depends on what kind of advancement we're talking about. On one level, to the kind of larger point, do we know if this is going to turn into legislation in these 4 years? That's an open question with a lot of question marks next to it. But can there be a recalibration of the Democratic Party around the issue so it's no longer something adjacent to progressive values, but at the center? I think we can do that in these 3 years.
Tell me where you think we are. This is a big question, but you can handle it. Tell me where you think we are at this moment in this journey or on this journey toward reparations.
Yeah, the first thing that people should know is that reparations is at its historic, most popular space it's ever been in. So historically, you have more support for reparations than it's ever had. Now, even if we look at, for example, what people call white people, and you look at what white people say about it, even if the numbers are sub 30%, they're higher than the zero they used to be for the last 100 years. For Black people in polling, we see it going anywhere between 70 to 88% of Black people supporting it. The breakdown tends to be around people talking about direct cash payments. But on direct cash payments, the majority of Black people are supportive of that. In general, when it's not direct cash payments, a lot of white people are supportive of reparations. So we're talking about an issue that across the board is getting higher in terms of its favoring, but it's about what is the national conversation and agenda, and also how often is this issue making its way outside of your excellent work and your excellent network of KBLA. How many other networks are featuring this conversation so people know that despite what you hear through these executive orders and being terrified, shout out to Lizzo, that actually there is a lot of work on reparative justice moving forward. In a couple of weeks in Tulsa, where they elected their first Black mayor, whom you've had on the show, Tavis, they're going to be rolling out a local reparations package, first of its kind. So people should know that this is happening in spite of, and perhaps because at this point, if you have such deep opposition, what are you holding your cards for? It's time to go hard in the paint.
There are two things that Marcus Anthony Hunter has said just now that I want to interrogate and probe when we come forward. In no particular order. The first is that stat he just gave us, that the polling data suggests that somewhere between 77 and 88% of Black people support reparations. You know what I'm thinking, right? That ain't 100%. If you take the low number, 77, and I think we should, because the high number may never really be the high number, so you got to go minimally on this. So if the number is 77% of Black people, why is that number not 100%? And what are the rest of these Black people thinking if they're not for reparations? I'm not indicting anybody. I'm just asking, why is that number not 100%? I didn't expect him to say something as low as 77% of Black people supporting reparations. We'll let him unpack that. And then I want to get to that notion of Trump's fearlessness. Got a couple of questions about that. I am delighted, as always, to be in conversation with our regular contributor, professor and author at UCLA, Marcus Anthony Hunter.
Hope, agency, dignity. This is Tavis Smiley.
Can you dig it? Come on!
As a fan, you know all the important sports cliches. And when you save money by bundling your home and auto with Progressive, you can get out there and give it 110%, even though that's mathematically impossible. And remember, failure is not an option. Well, it's always an option, just not a good one. But you're not worried because you've got ice in your veins. You're on fire. How can both of those things be true at the same time? Well, that's between you and your doctor. So get out there and leave it all on the field. Leave what? Who cares? Just leave it and save with a bundle from Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers. Not available in all states or situations.
BET and PBS, The Tom Joyner Morning Show, and NPR, the cover of Jet and the cover of Time. #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, 20 honorary doctorate degrees, a dozen NAACP Image Awards, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. From talk shows to talk radio, nobody's ever done it better. You like that? This is Tavis Smiley.
We ask seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You gotta live in the reality because this is it. Every day, you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community, and as a people, we've apologized for so much, but when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
He's a paradigm pioneer
And the top-rated African-American talk show host in the nation, according to Talkers Magazine. You're tapped in with Tavis Smiley right now.
Tavis Smiley in UCLA's Marcus Anthony Hunter. Marcus mentioned Tulsa a moment ago. There was news earlier this week, as I recall, that Decatur, Georgia, has also established a reparations task force. And I talked, I guess, a week or two ago to the folk in Maryland about the Maryland Commission on reparations. And so in states and cities all across the country, the conversation continues to advance, whether it advances or not. At the federal level, it's moving every day in municipalities and states all across the country. But that number you gave, Marcus, was arresting for me on a certain level, that 77% of black people support reparations. To your mind, why is that number not 100? And what are the rest of these black people thinking?
Yeah, I think some of it has to do with the lack of public awareness and education, that there's a steady diet of misinformation that people are fed every day about what reparations is supposed to mean and who it's for and what it would cost. And so I see some of that number, which started lower, has been inching its way up as more cities, on board themselves, as more states on board themselves, and also as more people start to take stock in what the conversation that is promoting is really about. It's really about getting to a positive and progressive place, and it's about more than just a check. Because one of the key pieces, of course, is always people are programmed to hear reparations and think check only. Yeah. And my position, and a lot of people's position, is that it's a check plus option. It's a check plus project.
Yep. Will there ever be, and should there ever be, does there have to be a uniform or universal definition of reparations?
I don't think there has to be necessarily a universal definition. I do think it needs to be a universal context and also character that we're discussing. It's important that we don't participate in deprioritizing and decentering the Black experience, and also any demands or overdue things due to the Black experience. And so for me, reparations is about attending to centering the Black experience and the harms that they have endured, and also what they have earned and what is due to them.
In our remaining moments with Marcus Anthony Hunter, I want to talk about, as I promised a moment ago, Trump's fearlessness. That's the phrase that he used. I think he's on point there, but I want to just unpack that for a few minutes when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
What's your quarrel with the world? You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Robinhood Gold members can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on annual retirement contributions. With Robinhood Gold, the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold.
Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Nia.
Hi, Nia. It's Jennifer. Did you know that Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Yeah, I work here.
Okay. I was just double checking. Get it?
Because Discover automatically doubles all the cash back you've earned at the end of your first year?
Oh, you get me, Nia.
You could say that I double get you.
I guess we've taken it too far.
You earn, we match. Discover Cashback Match. See terms at discover.com/creditcard.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Marcus Anthony Hunter, at least for the next 4 minutes here. I was reading, Marcus, a piece in Truth Out yesterday, I think. They have polling that suggests that Democrats pledging to impeach Trump could help their 2026 midterm chances. I wouldn't be one to hang my hat on that. But the data suggests, at least, that pledging to impeach Trump can help one's 2026 midterm chances if you happen to be a Democrat. That said, Trump continues to move in ways that suggest that he is, in fact, fearless, to use your word. How have you read, as compared to the way Democrats show up, Trump's fearlessness?
Yeah, he has a great way of making his own Kool-Aid with 3 ingredients: insolence, brashness, and insubordinance. And it mixes up into fearless aid, and people are drinking it like crazy. I'll just say, while that poll about impeaching him might sound like something, I am among the taxpayers who do not want to spend any more of my tax dollars on this particular issue. It only seems to ever embolden people to insurrect, which is also synonymous with the word sedition and mutiny. And I instead want to hear about what the party that has a lot of my community's votes are doing to center our issues. And our issues are not impeaching Trump. Our issues are reparations, on doing something in Altadena to help people rebuild. Our issues are on childcare and all of these anti-poverty. There are so many things that we've already outlined for the Democratic Party and the Republican Party that are Black issues.
I'm not suggesting at all, neither are you, that Democrats should move in the way that he's moved, which is to violate the rule of law and to upend settled norms in this country, et cetera, et cetera. Nobody's suggesting that. But I think there is a legitimate question to be asked, as I will ask now, about why Democrats, when they show up, don't show up with the same kind of fearlessness that Trump and Republicans do.
Right. And also that kind of like muscular executive branch part, I think is really strong. Like, we're seeing the muscular executive branch tear down higher education. But now that you've seen it and you see what they can do, we should be asking ourselves, as we start thinking about voting and midterms, how can we vote to have a muscular executive branch that builds up these things? Because apparently that is possible as well.
Yep. Speaking of Democrats, here's a completely random question, but I saved it to the very end here because I keep reading this stuff, and I have not raised this question with anybody, although I happen to know him and consider him a friend. What are you making of Stephen A. Smith making the rounds as if he's running for president?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because, the person I would love to know who thinks about that is LeBron James. What does King James think about that? And I don't know if he's going to get King James's vote. And now Bronny is old enough to vote as well. I think that's already 2 votes down.
Yeah, I think there are 2 votes he can count on not getting. But I digress on that point. But it is fascinating. I'm going to invite Stephen on the program.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. I'm just curious because, again, I've known Stephen for years. We're friends, we're brothers. But he really is showing up in all these places. I'm reading pieces about him in The Hill, in Politico. I saw him on Jake Tapper the other day. What is Stephen A. Smith talking about? And so we will invite him on the program and hear what he has to say. But it is interesting to see him move out of that sports realm into the realm of politics. Why he'd want to do that, I do not know. With a $100 million contract, what are you thinking?
Yeah, right.
But I digress on that for now. Marcus Anthony Hunter, our regular contributor, professor of African American Studies at UCLA, best-selling author. Good to have you on. We'll do it again soon. Have great meetings on the East Coast, my friend.
Thank you. God bless you.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Tensions flared outside of a Grand Rapids, Michigan courthouse as protesters clashed during jury deliberations in the trial of ex-officer Christopher Shore, charged with killing a black man, Patrick Luoya.
I think that they are really weighing the options and the facts, and I really, truly hope that they come up with something soon.
The jury is deadlocked, but was told to keep trying. 1 person was arrested. Jurors are in deliberations today in the Tyree Nichols murder trial. 3 former Memphis officers are charged with beating him to death back in 2023. That was caught on video. None of the former officers testified. And the Lending Tree survey shows 77% of parents say raising kids is more expensive than expected, with nearly half having fewer children due to costs. The average cost to raise a child now is nearly $300,000, up 36% in 2 years. A $5,000 baby bonus is reportedly under consideration. Get BIN News Now, on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the dagger?
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Another date for Lakers Nation to circle on your calendar. August 2nd is the day Luka Doncic becomes eligible to sign a 4-year extension worth $229 million. The Lakers are not obligated to give Doncic an extension. Doncic has 1 year left on his current contract that averages $53.7 million. The Lakers might want to see how Doncic is handling his offseason conditioning program before agreeing to give him an extension. One of the reasons Doncic is with the Lakers is because the Dallas Mavericks did not feel comfortable giving Doncic a super max extension worth $345 million. If Doncic was still with Dallas, he would have been eligible for that deal on August 2nd. Interesting development in the NBA playoffs. The road teams are 5-0 in the second round of the playoffs. Indiana, New York, Denver, and Golden State started their second round series with road wins. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
When the flames subside, who ensures that the stories endure? At KBLA Talk 1580, we're committed to preserving the voices that shape our community. We know people have short memories, and as long as this Black Talk radio station is on the air, we will not let Altadena be forgotten. We are honored to announce that the Altadena Historical Society will officially archive our recent town hall alongside every episode of Conversation Live, Altadena Rising with James Farr. This is the show of record, the definitive source for tracking Altadena's roots, resilience, recovery, and reunion. These stories will now live on for students, scholars, researchers, and journalists seeking truth and legacy in the months and years to come. Because history isn't just made, it's honored, it's recorded, and it's passed forward. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
The sweet and smooth stylings of one Josephine Baker in this hour, a celebration of Josephine Baker, the American-born French dancer and civil rights activist. Interestingly, Josephine Baker was all over the red carpet earlier this week at the Met Gala, celebrating black dandyism. There were several black stars who honored the black fashion icon, who was the first black woman to star in a major motion picture. In this hour, history professor Hanna Diamond takes us inside her real-life spy thriller, Josephine Baker's Secret War, the African-American star who fought for France and freedom. Before I commence that conversation, though, hear now some sound of Josephine Baker speaking at the 1963 March on Washington.
I want you to know that this is the happiest day of my entire life. As you all must know, I have had a very long life, and I'm 60 years old. The results today of seeing you all together, you're together as salt and pepper, just as you should be, just as I've always wanted you to be, and peoples of the world have always wanted you to be. I'm glad that in my homeland where I was born and love and respect, I'm glad to see this day come to pass. I want you to know also how proud I am to be here today, and after so many long years of struggle, fighting here and elsewhere for your rights, our rights, the rights of humanity.
Professor Diamond, when you hear that audio, that clip of Josephine Baker, you think what?
Well, I think it's very moving, and it really, it makes me feel that she was such an extraordinary woman, and so really very multi-layered. Here she was, a performer who arrived in France in 1925 and made her fortune. And there she is in 1963, speaking out at the March on Washington. It really was a quite remarkable life, wasn't it?
It was indeed. Let me start with this. Your fascination with Josephine Baker. Tell me about that part of the story first.
Well, my fascination with Josephine Baker began. I'm a Second World War historian of France, and I was asked to do some research on Josephine Baker and her activities during the Second World War. And I was amazed to discover that really we didn't know a great deal about what she got up to. I mean, there were a few memoirs and a few accounts that she had written that her final husband, Joe Bouillon, had put together, and her handler, who I'm sure we'll talk about, Jacques Abte, had written a book about their experiences. But I really felt that there was a gap in our knowledge about what she'd actually done, and that the full significance of her work had been overlooked. So I felt that having this expertise in the period, I was quite well placed to try and dig a bit deeper, to uncover archives and see what I could find.
She is not the only icon by far, of course, whose work has in fact been overlooked. No naivete here in asking this question, but why do you think her grand contributions all these years later have still been overlooked?
Well, I think in particular this period in France during the Second World War, having done quite a lot of research on the role that women played fighting in the French resistance, contributing in many, many ways, sometimes invisibly because they were able to pass without being noticed when the men couldn't. But in particular, women of color, women from different ethnic backgrounds, not only were women overlooked, but women of color and women from ethnic backgrounds were sort of doubly overlooked. So in a sense, this isn't surprising to us, although we are now, since the 80s, making a good deal of progress in revealing the really important contributions that they made.
Tell me how she has been regarded inside of France. And I ask that question in part because I agree with you that her contributions have been overlooked, and I think we're starting to turn the corner on that. But I think more so in Europe, more so in France, even than here stateside. I could be wrong about that, but I'm interested to get your take on that.
Well, it's difficult for me to speak for the US in general, but certainly in France, I think her main reputation is based on her pre-war fame. You know, this extraordinary story of this 19-year-old African-American dancer who arrived in 1925 and absolutely stunned audiences by her dancing and her, I suppose we could say, provocative, extraordinary dancing style. And she became this huge star virtually overnight, and went on to not just be a dancer, but she learned to sing, as we've just heard, in a very, very accomplished way, and also became a film star, as you pointed out. So the French image, I guess, of Josephine Baker is very much centered on that period of her life, and the very famous banana skirt as well that she wore when she was dancing, and an image that has stuck with her.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you finished your point. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, well, I was going to say that did change somewhat in November 2021 when President Macron chose to honor Josephine Baker by having her ashes transferred from their resting place, well, symbolically transferred, to the Great Mausoleum, which is the great national honor of having them transferred to the Pantheon. And during this process in 2021, people did talk a lot more about Josephine Baker's war service and indeed her civil rights activism.
Yeah.
But until that time, I don't think French people knew much about all that.
Yeah, you said the same thing I was about to say, that in terms of how the French have honored her, she is the first black woman in the Pantheon. And that's high cotton, as we say over here. Just getting started in this hour with the history professor, Hanna Diamond, going inside her book, Josephine Baker's Secret War, the African-American star who fought for France and freedom. It's all Josephine Baker this hour on Tavis Smiley.
Interrogating and unpacking.
That's what we do around here.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
This is an ad by BetterHelp. Think about your mentors and idols, the people who inspire you the most. While it may look like they have all the answers, they don't. But they do know when to ask questions and seek the support they need. In a world that glorifies hyper-independence, it's easy to forget that we're all better with a support system. Therapy is a great way to find a consistent source of support in your life, so you can break free from the outdated belief that seeking help is a sign of weakness. BetterHelp has experienced therapists ready to help you with challenges ranging from anxiety and depression to relationships and stress. It's convenient, too. You can join a session with the click of a button, helping you fit therapy into your busy life. You can even send your therapist a message anytime something comes up. Build your support system with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/ABCRadio today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/ABCRadio.
You really about to do it? 40 acres in the mule. This is bigger than the music. You really about to do it? Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
Who among us doesn't like black music? But Kendrick is right. This moment is so much bigger than music. These are serious times. We've got serious problems, and we need serious people who understand that slogans are not solutions. When you want substantial and sober analysis about things that matter to you and the ones you love, this is where you turn. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
The Comedy Connection series featuring KBLA's Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, and the alpha male of comedy, Ray Grady. We're going to transform relationship disasters into stand-up material live at Inglewood's Miracle Theater on May 31st at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. My clinical team will disclose all of your dating woes, while the alpha male of comedy, Ray Grady, has hand-selected supremely talented comedians to roast all of our tragic relationship choices. I dare you to bring your ex's phone number, because Ray, he's going to text it live, and the crowd will be sourcing emojis. Tickets are moving swiftly, so don't hesitate to grab yours at themiracleinglewood.com before I diagnose your dating history as a pre-existing condition.
Less monologue,
more dialogue.
Tavis Smiley continues right now.
Étant petite vague chagrin, j'admirais dans le magasin le teinte pâle de poupées blondes. J'aurais voulu le ressembler et j'ai disais l'air accablé, Me croyant être seule, Bruno, je voudrais être blanche pour
I'm Tavis Smiley. Our guest in this hour is history professor Hanna Diamond. We are celebrating the life and legacy, the work and witness of one Josephine Baker. Her new book, Professor Diamond's book that is called Josephine Baker's Secret War, the African-American star who fought for France and freedom. I'll get to her handler here in just a moment. We've been talking just kind of set the frame here for where we want to go in this hour, talking about how she got to France and the way that the French have regarded her historically. But I've always been fascinated by this, and I've had these conversations, of course, a number of times over the course of my career, Professor Diamond. But when it comes to people like Josephine Baker or James Baldwin or any number of other persons I could list, what is it to your mind about France that was so welcoming to these now iconic Black Americans?
Well, certainly when Josephine Baker went to France between the wars, there was a huge interest in all things, from the French point of view, African, but African American as well. They sort of englobed African American culture within that, and the Harlem Renaissance, jazz, the dance, everything, the African art, music, everything was very much celebrated by the French, and they were very welcomed, and many musicians between the wars had extraordinary careers in France, although unlike Josephine Baker, who married a Frenchman and became French, the other members of the African American community who were in France between the wars, most of them did go home when the war broke out. Similarly, after the war, we do see people like James Baldwin also make a very comfortable home in France and feel very, very welcome there. And I think one of the big reasons from their point of view was that they felt that France was much more open and more interested in them, and that they could make successful careers, which wasn't possible for them in an America which was with segregation. So I think that was one of the key attractions, Tavis, for them.
Mm-hmm. Let me swing out wide just for a second. I promise I'll come right back. I'm only asking this because you are a historian. I suspect you may have some opinion about this, and if not, we'll push forward. But I couldn't help but think. I mean, obviously, been to France. I can't say more times than I can count, but been there many times over the course of my career and life, and love visiting Paris and the rest of the country. But we were talking a moment ago about how welcoming France was then to Black Americans like Josephine Baker and James Baldwin. Fast forward to where we are now, and I'm reading these pieces all the time. I've seen some of this on my trips to France, where the country doesn't seem as open now to Black folk, namely Africans, as it was then. And there's a significant slice of your population pushing back on the kind of African or Black immigration that they seem to have welcomed, certainly with regard to certain people back then. So my sense, that's a long way of asking or saying that my sense is, I could be wrong, that France is not as open now to this kind of cultural inclusion or explosion as they were then. Does that make sense at all as a question?
I think it makes sense as a question. I don't think there's a simple answer to that.
Okay.
I think here in Europe there is certainly a shift politically, and a lot of the discussions around diversity have been picked up by far-right political groups, and certainly in France we're seeing some of these ideas are gaining a lot of ground. So I think in some ways you're right, but I also think culturally I have also found anecdotally the French to be incredibly open-minded and enjoyed the various musical trends that have come to us from African American communities. So I think the answer is yes and no. I think it's quite complex and nuanced. Is that fair, Tavis?
No, it's very fair. It's very fair. I first of all, I just thank you for taking the question, because that ain't why you're on here. You're on here to talk about Josephine Baker. But I obviously just was thinking in real time about the nation state of France, and again how welcoming it was then, and all of these conversations you see now in the media and these rallies and protests inside France that seem to be pushing back on this kind of immigration these days. But I digress. You answered the question. I just wanted to see if you had any thoughts about it, given that we are obviously having this conversation in real time, looking back historically. And speaking of looking back historically, let me again go straight to your book, Josephine Baker's Secret War, the African-American star who fought for France and freedom. Take me inside the book and give us a sense of the story that you wanted to tell in your text.
Well, I think the story is of Josephine Baker, this huge star who had remarkable recognition wherever she went and was celebrated and had huge public appeal. To my mind, she's one of really our first celebrities. We understand celebrity culture now and we're very used to it, but it was a completely new thing then. And how this incredibly well-known individual who was able to use her celebrity to fight first on behalf of the Allies and then in the latter part of the war to support General de Gaulle's Free French resistance movement. And she did this in a number of ways. Spying was one of them, but she also was able to entertain troops and did a huge amount to boost the morale of Allied and French troops during the period. And I think the story of the book is how Josephine Baker was able to use her celebrity platform to achieve this. And also, I think one of the key arguments I make is that this wartime experience was absolutely crucial for her post-war life. And many of her ideas and her feeling that she wanted to fight for civil rights and equality, I think, came about during this period of the Second World War when she understood how to use her celebrity as a platform.
Mm-hmm. Tell me more about why. It's the why questions that always fascinate me, Professor Diamond. Tell me why Josephine Baker chose to be a spy.
Well, she chose to be a spy. She was approached. She was approached by Jacques Abday, who we mentioned earlier, who was the head of counterintelligence in the Paris area. He had been in this position, in this role, since 1936. And he was told by Daniel Morani, who was Josephine Baker's he, looked after her impresario, that Josephine Baker could be useful to him. And initially, he was very skeptical. I mean, here she was, this great star. She had also a reputation for being rather eccentric. Your listeners may be aware of the stories. She would walk down the Champs-Élysées with her pet cheetah on a lead, and this cheetah had a diamond collar, and people would follow her down the road. And, she learnt to drive when she was given a car in public. And I think Abday thought, well, she's not really the obvious kind of figure to be a spy. Spies need to pass unnoticed and slip around and mingle in with the, and Josephine Baker didn't really have that. He didn't think that, she would be interested in doing that kind of work. So it was a bit of a revelation to him when they did finally meet, and he was very impressed with her. She was really quite a different person without all the trappings of her celebrity, and she spoke to him very movingly about, how she owed this great debt to the French, who'd propelled her to stardom in a way she could have never dreamt of in her native United States, and that she wanted to do something to contribute to the war effort. So he thought, well, I'll give her a try. And she didn't let him down. You know, she had the networks. She was able, during this period, we're in the phony war, November, December 1939. She was able to secure invitations into embassies. She went into the Italian embassy. The Italians adored her. She'd spoken out, perhaps ill-advisedly, in support of Mussolini, and they held her in their hearts ever since then. She swanned into the embassy. All the diplomats were starstruck by her presence. And she could ask question, you know, what are the war aims of the Italians? What do they expect? And they spoke, perhaps indiscreetly. And the story is she scribbled down what they'd said to her on her arms, on bits of paper that she hid around her person. And she reported back to Abte. And all this added up to something that he thought, well, yes, this information can be useful to me. And then she went into the Japanese embassy, and similarly, of course, Japan wasn't involved in the war till later on, but she was able to gain, people spoke to her without suspecting for a minute that what they were saying could be of any importance to her or to anyone else. So she had this real ability. Also, she had such a warm and friendly personality. I think she could cajole information out of people, and she was very, very good at it.
I listened to your. I didn't want to interrupt, and I love the way you stretched out on that. My sense, though, is that part of the reason that she agreed to be a spy is, as I hear you, she felt this was a way for her to repay a debt to the French people.
She did feel that. She felt that very deeply. But she also understood what Nazism was. The Nazis had been, when she was touring in Germany and in Austria at the end of the 1920s, they had called her a black devil. They had heckled in her concerts. In Austria, they had tried to ban her. She understood the dangers of Nazism. She deeply understood their racism. And she knew that she was at personal risk as well from the Nazis. She also, I mentioned that she married in 1937. She married a man called Jean Lyon, and he was Jewish. And she was very, very attached to her Jewish family. And of course, these networks of Jewish families, the anti-Semitism was rife in Germany once Hitler came to power in 1933. And she realized also how dangerous the Germans were from that point of view as well. So she had both a personal and, if you like, a kind of political ideological reason for wanting to join the war effort.
Was her race, let me just ask this question rather point blank, was her race never a factor in France?
I think a factor. I'm not sure what you mean about
and you were talking a moment ago about the places that she appeared when certain people booed her and heckled her and called her out of her name. We know how celebrated she was in France. Never mind her Black American status. Was her race ever an issue in France?
Well, I don't know that it was an issue negatively.
Right.
I mean, she made her career on the back of being a kind of a pseudo-French colonial subject, if you like. So her race in that sense was very central to her success. And she would play the Tunisian shepherdess or the Martiniquez goat herd in her songs and in her films. So to that degree, race was very central. But I think in terms of racism and negativity, I didn't uncover anything negative about in that sense until the Vichy government came to power, and they actually banned any black performers from going on the stage. This is, Marshal Pétain's government after the fall of France in 1940. And strictly speaking, she would not have been allowed to perform in Vichy France, but she did actually do it because she performed in Marseille in late 1940. She puts on her opera La Créole to raise some funds.
I mean, I've been at this long enough to know that just because you're black and celebrated does not mean you can't also be black and reviled in certain circles. And that's the other part I was getting at. We know how celebrated she was just curious whether or not her race ever got in the way while she spent all those years in France. The book is called Josephine Baker's Secret War, The African-American Star Who Fought for France and Freedom. Its author is our guest, Professor Hanna Diamond, right now on Tavis Smiley.
For all the freedom-loving folk, this is Tavis Smiley.
I feel like freedom.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Tensions flared outside of a Grand Rapids, Michigan courthouse as protesters clashed during jury deliberations in the trial of ex-officer Christopher Shore, charged with killing a black man, Patrick Lyoya.
I think that they are really weighing the options and the facts, and I really, truly hope that they come up with something soon.
The jury is deadlocked, but was told to keep trying. One person was arrested. Jurors are in deliberations today in the Tyre Nichols murder trial. 3 former Memphis officers are charged with beating him to death back in 2023. That was caught on video. None of the former officers testified. And a Lending Tree survey shows 77% of parents say raising kids is more expensive than expected, with nearly half having fewer children due to costs. The average cost to raise a child now is nearly $300,000, up 36% in 2 years. A $5,000 baby bonus is reportedly under consideration. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Got issues with youth or high school sports? Positive Coaching Alliance can help. PCA, a national nonprofit, offers more than 1,000 free online resources for youth and high school sports coaches, parents, students, and administrators. Visit PCADevZone.org.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Another date for Lakers Nation to circle on your calendar. August 2nd is the day Luka Doncic becomes eligible to sign a 4-year extension worth $229 million. The Lakers are not obligated to give Doncic an extension. Doncic has 1 year left on his current contract that averages $53.7 million. The Lakers might want to see how Doncic is handling his offseason conditioning program before agreeing to give him an extension. One of the reasons Doncic is with the Lakers is because the Dallas Mavericks did not feel comfortable giving Doncic a super max extension worth $345 million. If Doncic was still with Dallas, he would have been eligible for that deal on August 2nd. Interesting development in the NBA playoffs. The road teams are 5-0 in the second round of the playoffs. Indiana, New York, Denver, and Golden State started their second round series with road wins. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic.
With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. With so many shows on our station weekdays and weekends, it's hard for me to keep track of all the guests who are actually in studio on any given day. I wish I'd known in advance that LADA Nathan Hochman was coming in studio for a recent interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Curran Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear, neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, And at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Kern Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. D.A. Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know the United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time? Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
More honesty than you can handle. More empowerment than you can imagine. You're tuned in to Tavis Smiley.
Yeah, 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 bli, khodi, moli, ya plaisir, sieli, prends la conga, yeah, bli, khodi, pour danser, retentir, yeah, la conga, bli, khodi.
Héroïne de guerre,
war hero,
combattante,
a fighter,
danseuse,
a dancer,
chanteuse,
a singer,
noire défendant les noirs,
a black
mais d'abord
woman
femme
defending
défendant le
black
genre
people,
humain,
but first and foremost a woman defending the human race,
américaine
both American
et française.
and French.
Josephine Baker
Josephine
mena
Baker
tant de
led
combats
countless fights
avec
with a sense of freedom,
légèreté,
levity,
gaieté.
cheerfulness.
Fulgurante de beauté et de lucidité dans un
Strikingly
siècle
beautiful and
d'égarement,
perceptive in a century of
à chaque
misguidance,
tournant de
she
l'histoire,
made the right choices at
les
every
justes
turn of
choix,
history,
distinguant
choosing
toujours les lumières des
light
ténèbres.
and enlightenment over darkness.
Rien,
And yet,
rien n'était
her life was nothing but one that was predetermined.
Josephine Baker is the first performing artist, first black woman, and first American to be honored with a Pantheon induction. French President Emmanuel Macron presided over that ceremony there. Some sound from that amazing day where Josephine Baker was so honored by French society. Our guest in this hour celebrating Josephine Baker is history professor Hanna Diamond. Her new book is called Josephine Baker's Secret War, the African-American Star who fought for France and for freedom. Delighted to have her on in this hour as we celebrate Josephine Baker. I mentioned at the top of our show today, and the top of this hour for that matter, that there were all kinds of tributes to Josephine Baker earlier this week, interestingly and ironically, at the Met Gala. So if you saw any of those photos, you saw a number of stars who were honoring her given that the theme this year at the Met Gala was Black dandyism. So there are all kinds of folk on the carpet doing their best to honor Josephine Baker. And so interesting that we are in this conversation today about Josephine Baker. Now, Professor Diamond, you mentioned earlier her handler. I assume there was a reason for your mentioning that. Tell us about her handler.
Well, Jacques Apté was, we talked about how he was the person who recruited her to the French Secret Services. But unlike Josephine Baker, he did fall under suspicion. She, as far as I can tell from the source material, did not. But she had this huge advantage also that she could travel around. So not only did she have the networks that put her in the contact with the people that could give her the information she needed, and she could then pass on to the allies and those that found it useful, but she could also move around. She could travel. And there was a point at which Jacques Apté and Josephine Baker were based in Morocco. Morocco, of course, part of the French Empire, so it fell under the Vichy government. They were based in Casablanca, and Josephine Baker also liked to spend time in Marrakesh, further south. And she needed to go on missions. She needed to go to Lisbon to make contact with British intelligence. And also she needed to travel in Spain. And at this point, Jacques Apté fell under suspicion. He couldn't get the visas and the entry visas, the exit visas he needed to travel around, whereas Josephine Baker, who would refuse her? And she was able to say, I'm going to go and put on some performances in Lisbon. And she got the stamp she needed on her passport, and she was able to waft through those borders. Here we are during a war at a time when borders would normally be shut. So these were the advantages she had, and Jacques Apté had taught her how to go into these events and use her fame to her advantage, and then she could come back, she could meet with British intelligence and report back on what she had seen.
Was no one... I'm sorry, finish your point. I'm sorry, go ahead.
She was able to go to Lisbon, and she also did a tour in Spain in 1941, in spring 1941, and because the Allies were very nervous that the Germans might be attempting to invade North Africa through Spain, and that Hitler had managed to make a deal with Franco, and she was able to observe when she was in Spain that in fact this wasn't happening. So that was her big advantage as a spy.
I know she's Josephine Baker, and I hear all the advantages to her being a spy, given her celebrity. But was no one ever suspicious? She never got caught, never got ID'd?
As far as I can tell from the source material that I've seen, no one ever suspected her. She was underestimated, and some of that might have been because people didn't expect that someone like her could possibly be doing that kind of work. And also because she projected an image that was completely different from who she was, really, in my view. She was a performer. She knew how to dupe people, and that's what made her such a wonderful spy.
Yep. What did your research suggest to you about whether or not she actually enjoyed this? I mean, she felt a debt to the French people. We talked about that earlier, and this was one of the ways for her to repay that debt, to become a spy. But what's your research suggest to you about whether or not she actually enjoyed doing this work?
I think she really enjoyed doing her best for the war effort. I think that comes through. I have to say, one of the really helpful sources that I used for this research was the African American press. And Josephine Baker liked nothing better than to chat to a journalist. And if you chart through the articles in the African American press, the Chicago Defender and many others, New York Amsterdam News, they followed her wherever she was. I could place her throughout the war on the basis of those those journals and those articles. And something really interesting surfaced from that research, and that was during the period when the Americans had invaded North Africa. We've had the Allied landings in November 1942, Operation Torch, and Josephine Baker had just come out of several months, actually, of very serious illness. And she was determined to go out and meet the American troops and entertain them. And this was something that she felt very keenly. And what comes through very strongly from her work entertaining the troops was that she insisted on performing to mixed audiences, which was very unusual in the context of the time. And also, she started to speak out on behalf of African-American servicemen whom she met. Josephine Baker had left segregated America in 1925. She'd been back to America for visits, but she'd never really been celebrated or appreciated there. But when she was singing to the troops in North Africa, she was confronted once again with the realities of segregation, and she saw how the African-American soldiers were being treated. And of course, they weren't allowed to go into active service. They had to carry out all the less attractive jobs in the military. They did the building work, they ran the canteens, they buried the dead. And she says to these journalists, in fact, not just African-American journalists, all the journalists she meets during this period, you know, I want to speak out on, I'm so proud. She talks about how proud she is of her race. That's the language she uses. I want people to recognize the great work that is being done by African-American soldiers here so people can understand them. And she also talks about herself as contributing to the cause of the African Americans. I think.
I'm sorry, I mean to cut you off. Hold that thought 1 second. I want to just let you complete it when we come forward. But I love this story, how she's standing up, even though she's a French citizen at this point. She's standing up for African American soldiers. More of that story when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month. If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You gotta live in the reality because this is it. Every day, you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial because yes, it is. Don't stay in bargaining where you're praying for a miracle and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. Really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community, and as a people, we've apologized for so much, but when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down. Helping to make you the most knowledgeable person in your circle of friends. This is Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Professor Hanna Diamond, author of the book Josephine Baker's Secret War, the African American Star, who fought for France and freedom. I hate to cut you off there, Professor Diamond. Finish your point about Josephine Baker standing up for these African American troops.
Well, I found this in the source material, that she was speaking out and really felt that she wanted to promote the work that they were doing in the war effort. And of course, she, like many others, the famous reporter for the Chicago Defender, Ollie Stewart, also had high hopes of that their contribution during the war would lead to the end of segregation after the war. And there was, of course, a huge sadness that didn't come about. Nope. And I believe that was what pushed Josephine Baker into, in the immediate post-war period, she joins anti-racist groups, first in France, and then she becomes more and more outspoken. She comes to America and comments on the situation of segregation. And then, of course, then she starts to adopt the children. And I'm sure some of your listeners will know the story of her rainbow tribe, as she called it, of children she adopted from all over the world and brought up in the religion she deemed appropriate for them, and took them to her wonderful chateau, Les Milandes, in the Dordogne, because she wanted to show that we can all live together peacefully and happily, and that we're all the same, whatever the color of our skin. And I think, I do believe this commitment began during the Second World War, when she was working to support the African-American troops there.
Yeah. No, I think many of our listeners know that part of her story. Maybe not so much about the spy work, which is why I wanted to have you on, but we know about her adopting all those babies, her rainbow tribe, and making a universal statement, to your point, about the fact that we are all one people. When we come forward in our remaining moments with Professor Hanna Diamond, I do want to ask her what she thinks Josephine Baker's spy work helped to do to inform her identity. It's hard to really know her full story and not understand her spy work and the impact that I think it had on informing her identity. We'll let Professor Diamond respond to that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
BET and PBS, The Tom Joyner Morning Show, and NPR, the cover of Jet and the cover of Time. #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, 20 honorary doctorate degrees, a dozen NAACP Image Awards, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. From talk shows to talk radio, nobody's ever done it better. You like that? This is Tavis Smiley. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. If you need help getting your resume in order, finding job training, or landing a job, we've got 3 great options for you. First, the City of Los Angeles has WorkSource centers across the area offering free job support. The California Workforce Development Board can help you with everything from GED prep to vocational training at no cost to you. On the federal level, the Department of Labor's American Job Centers offer a full range of services for job seekers and businesses alike. Visit careeronestop.org, or for more info, just call California's Help Center or visit cwdb.ca.gov or call 916-657-1440. For the City of Los Angeles programs, go to ewdd.lacity.gov or call 213-744-7300. All these services are free to help you get your next job. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
My mom has decided to learn to paint, and she's good.
My dad's now into creative cuisine, and I've already put on 6 pounds.
Learning new things comes with age.
My mom, she started forgetting my name and what we're talking about.
Forgetting well-known things doesn't. Memory loss may be a sign of Alzheimer's disease. Early detection gives you and your loved one time to plan for the future. Learn the warning signs of Alzheimer's at 10signs.org. Brought to you by the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Made fresh daily in the Mert Park, Los Angeles, California. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and history professor Hanna Diamond, author of the book Josephine Baker's Secret War, the African-American star who fought for France and freedom. Just 4 minutes left in this conversation that I've learned a great deal from. Hope you have as well. So one of the things we learned from this conversation is that Josephine Baker's Black heritage was absolutely central to her wartime experiences. But I am curious, Professor Diamond, as to how you think her spy work on behalf of France helped to further inform her identity.
Well, I think she understood that she could use her celebrity as a force for good, that she could mobilize her platform. And, you know, let's not forget, she took huge risks, and there were many other celebrities. I'm thinking of Maurice Chevalier and Edith Piaf, who didn't make the same choices as Josephine Baker, but she did, and she came out of the war a war hero, and she understood that, you know, what she wanted to do and how she wanted to contribute to these causes, be they the Allied cause, but also the cause for equality and freedom, as we've talked about. So I think she came, I see the war period, the experience of spying as a kind of apprenticeship, if you will, for what she would later become in the post-war period.
Yep. So here's my exit question. So what impact, what is the enduring legacy of her spy work as you see it?
I think the enduring legacy is that she was able to bring round a particularly support for de Gaulle, the Free French, the resistance, and she was able also secretly to pass on valuable material to help the Allied war effort.
Yeah. As I said earlier in this conversation, beyond us being enthralled by her fashion, and her music, I don't know that in this country, Josephine Baker has yet gotten the respect that she deserves. But as I mentioned earlier, she is the first American, the first Black woman to be inducted, enshrined, I should say, at the Pantheon. And that's a big deal. So I'm delighted to see that the French, at least, are giving her the sort of respect that she deserves. Finally, this is my real exit question. I got what do you hope that readers will take away from all this research that you've done, Professor Diamond?
Well, I hope that it will do precisely that. It'll help us to remember Josephine Baker for the extraordinary, multifaceted, talented, brave woman, Black woman that she was.
Yeah. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you for the book. I can only imagine. I talk to all kinds of authors, but I'm always fascinated by those who spend all this time, years, in fact, researching a particular subject that informs us in ways about a character that we have yet to really be introduced to. And so I thank you for all your work to bring this book to us. The book, once again, is written by history professor Hanna Diamond. It's a real-life spy thriller, and the book is called Josephine Baker's Secret War, the African-American star who fought for France and for freedom. And I've been delighted, Professor Diamond, to have had you on this program. Thank you again for the time.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's good to have you. One more hour to go. When we come forward, we will talk about another book, The Enlightenment, I should say, From the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter, tracing the impacts of racial trauma in Black communities from the colonial era to the present. Going to be a great hour when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now.
Tensions flared outside of a Grand Rapids, Michigan courthouse as protesters clashed during jury deliberations in the trial of ex-officer Christopher Shore, charged with killing a black man, Patrick Lyoya.
I think that they are really weighing the options and the facts, and I really, truly hope that they come up with something soon.
The jury is deadlocked, but was told to keep trying. One person was arrested. Jurors are in deliberations today in the Tyree Nichols murder trial. 3 former Memphis officers are charged with beating him to death back in 2023. That was caught on video. None of the former officers testified. And a Lending Tree survey shows 77% of parents say raising kids is more expensive than expected, with nearly half having fewer children due to costs. The average cost to raise a child now is nearly $300,000, up 36% in 2 years. A $5,000 baby bonus is reportedly under consideration. Get BIN News now, on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Another date for Lakers Nation to circle on your calendar. August 2nd is the day Luka Doncic becomes eligible to sign a 4-year extension worth $229 million. The Lakers are not obligated to give Doncic an extension. Doncic has 1 year left on his current contract that averages $53.7 million. The Lakers might want to see how Doncic is handling his offseason conditioning program before agreeing to give him an extension. One of the reasons Doncic is with the Lakers is because the Dallas Mavericks did not feel comfortable giving Doncic a super max extension worth $345 million. If Doncic was still with Dallas, he would have been eligible for that deal on August 2nd. Interesting development in the NBA playoffs. The road teams are 5-0 in the second round of the playoffs. Indiana, New York, Denver, and Golden State started their second round series with road wins. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
When the flames subside, who ensures that the stories endure? At KBLA Talk 1580, we're committed to preserving the voices that shape our community. We know people have short memories, and as long as this Black Talk radio station is on the air, we will not let Altadena be forgotten. We are honored to announce that the Altadena Historical Society will officially archive our recent town hall, alongside every episode of Conversation Live, Altadena Rising with James Farr. This is the show of record, the definitive source for tracking Altadena's roots, resilience, recovery, and reunion. These stories will now live on for students, scholars, researchers, and journalists seeking truth and legacy in the months and years to come. Because history isn't just made, it's honored, it's recorded, and it's passed forward. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
Mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother, there's far too many of you dying. You know we've got to find a way to bring some loving here today. Yeah. Father, we don't need to escalate. You see, war is not the answer, for only love can conquer hate. You know we've got to find a way to bring some love here today.
It's Marvin Gaye on Tavis Smiley, and I'm delighted to have you with us in this hour of our program. And in this hour, Professor and Hope Chair in Peace and Health at McMaster University, Dr. Ingrid Waldron, marks Mental Health Awareness Month and 5 years since the murder of George Floyd on May 25th, later this month. So we'll get some guidance in this hour for navigating racial trauma and decolonizing our healthcare system. Her new text is titled From the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter, Tracing the Impacts of Racial Trauma in Black Communities from the Colonial Era to the Present. I am pleased to welcome Professor Ingrid Waldron to this program. How are you today? Professor Waldron, Dr. Waldron.
Hello, Tavis. I'm really great. How are you?
There you are. I hear you now. How are you today?
I'm really great.
It's good to have you on. Couldn't hear you there for a second. I'm glad we got your audio up. Okay, let me start with this. I was reading your book and preparing, of course, for our conversation, and I'm fascinated by the frame that you chose. And by frame, I mean from the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter. Why such a huge frame?
I think when you look at, I have tracing in the title, and I wanted to look at this as a bit of a journey, progression over time in terms of how the Black body has been perceived and treated, specifically within the field of psychiatry and within other mental health professions. The Enlightenment era was that time when, it was during the scientific revolution, it was that time when psychiatrists and doctors were perceiving the Black body in very specific ways as, ultra strong. Black men were seen as extremely masculine, Black women as extremely tough. And therefore, there was this perception that Black people could not get mental illness. We were seen as too strong, but we were also seen as coming from societies, African societies, that were seen as too uncivilized to have mental illness. So that was the time when all of these stereotypes were being created about Black people. And then when we get to the Black Lives Matter, I really wanted to emphasize the trauma that comes from anti-Black police violence. So that's one form of structural violence that happens within the criminal justice system. But in my book, I talk about various forms of structural inequities, including inequities within education, within labor, within employment, within the healthcare system. So it's kind of tracing structural inequities throughout the decades, and also looking at the ways in which the Black body has been perceived and treated within psychiatry throughout the decades.
Yeah, I'm going to need a whole hour to unpack this. I'm glad I have an hour because there's a whole lot to cover. Giving that first comment. Let me go to this first because I heard this line, and I know that my audience heard it as well. It jumped out at me. It is both arresting and damning at the same time. This line that you used a moment ago, that we were perceived during the Enlightenment period, Black people that is, were perceived as too uncivilized to even have mental illness. Unpack that for me just a bit more, please.
Mental illness was seen as something that only happened to Europeans, the more sophisticated, civilized society. So if you remember that movie, A Beautiful Mind with Russell Crowe, there was a certain time when, for example, schizophrenia was seen as an illness that impacted poets and sophisticated individuals and intellectuals. I believe Russell Crowe had schizophrenia in that movie. And then you get to the civil rights era, where Black men and Black women were protesting, and there was a term that was used that was called Negroid schizophrenia, because the kind of anger of Black men, particularly the belligerence or the masculinized belligerence, was seen as a form of illness, seen as a form of Negroid schizophrenia. So even in this book, I talk about the transition of various mental illnesses from being diagnosed within a particular racial group and then changing through the years, where it now is disproportionately, that diagnosis is disproportionately applied to Black men, right? So what we see now when we see Black men who are in psychiatric facilities or who are being diagnosed, they're typically misdiagnosed or overdiagnosed with schizophrenia. So that's what I'm kind of talking about when I use some of these terms, and when I talk about the Black body and how it was perceived, and how we were perceived as kind of noble savages, in a way, tough, strong, the mules of the world, but too unsophisticated, too infantile, too uncivilized to have a mental illness.
No, as I said, arresting is just one word for it, but that is, I was gobsmacked to hear you phrase it the way that you did, but I receive it. When we come forward, I want to start with this. You've heard us say 2 or 3 times now in referencing this book, From the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter. You've heard her reference the way that our black bodies were perceived, the way our black bodies were treated. I'm not so sure that that's changed a lot over the years, so we'll start there. Our guest is Dr. Ingrid Waldron. Delighted to have her right now on Tavis Smiley.
From California to the Carolinas, everybody's listening to Tavis. More when we come forward.
Joe Montana here. In my football days, I knew the importance of a strong defense. Now I'm sharing how you can help defend your health against pneumococcal pneumonia and invasive pneumococcal disease. Are you 50 or older like me? The CDC now recommends vaccination against pneumococcal disease. Even if you're healthy, your age puts you at increased risk and over 6 times greater risk of hospitalization with pneumococcal pneumonia than adults under 50. Schedule your appointment today at vaxassist.com.
Sponsored by Pfizer.
You really about to do it? 40 acres in the mule. This is bigger than the music. You really about to do it? Yeah, they tried to rig the game, but you can't fake influence.
Who among us doesn't like black music? But Kendrick is right. This moment is so much bigger than music. These are serious times. We've got serious problems, and we need serious people who understand that slogans are not solutions. When you want substantial and sober analysis about things that matter to you and the ones you love, this is where you turn. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we've got your black.
Nationwide is so much more than a great insurance company. They're one of America's largest financial services companies. Like how I'm more than Saquon Barkley, the NFL's reigning leading rusher. I'm also the NFL's leading husher. Shh, hush up back there. Wow, I might have just set the hushing record. Well, almost. For your insurance and financial needs, Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Investment Services Corporation, member FINRA, Columbus, Ohio.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
The Comedy Connection series featuring KBLA's Zoe Williams, the voice of reason, and the alpha male of comedy, Ray Grady. We're going to transform relationship disasters into stand-up material live at Inglewood's Miracle Theater on May 31st at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. My clinical team will disclose all of your dating woes, while the alpha male of comedy, Ray Grady, has hand-selected supremely talented comedians to roast all of our tragic relationship choices. I dare you to bring your ex's phone number because Ray, he's going to text it live and the crowd will be sourcing emojis. Tickets are moving swiftly, so don't hesitate to grab yours at themiracleinglewood.com before I diagnose your dating history as a pre-existing condition.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Professor Ingrid Waldron, who is author of the new book, From the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter, tracing the impacts of racial trauma in black communities from the colonial era to the present. So we start, Dr. Waldron, with the question I posed moments ago, and that is whether or not, to your earlier point about the ways in which our black bodies were perceived and treated in the Enlightenment, versus the ways in which our black bodies are perceived and treated in real time. Is there a difference?
Not really. So that's actually one of the main points I make in the book, is that those stereotypes and perceptions, negative stereotypes, have continued to inform psychiatry and other mental health professions up until today. And very little has changed is the argument that I make in the book, which is why at the end of the book, I talk about the need to decolonize all our mental health spaces. Our spaces are your Western, they're negative, they're harmful to Black people in terms of diagnosis. You know, many diagnoses like schizophrenia follow you for the rest of your life. And that's considered, schizophrenia is considered to be extremely pathological. So having that follow you for the rest of your life as a Black person is incredibly harmful. So the point I make in the book is that these stereotypes continue, these attitudes and perceptions about Black people as stronger, as hostile, as belligerent, as problematic, continue. And it influences not just the type of treatment or diagnosis that tend to be applied to Black people, but it also has an influence on the type of care meted out by health professionals. On the one hand, we are not given the kind of empathy that other communities are given. So we often don't matter within our healthcare systems. But also then we get more aggressive, particularly Black men, more aggressive treatment within psychiatric facilities. So it could be much more aggressive physical handling, but also many studies talk about the over prescribing of medication as a way to control Black people, Black men particularly. So in the book, I talk about pathways to care, and when there's a mental health crisis in the home, let's say a Black man, for example, is having a crisis in the home, you'll find that his mother or his friend is now calling the police, right? Because they don't know what to do. And we know, certainly in Canada, I know in the United States, but people would be surprised to know that in Canada and also in the UK, my book looks at all of these 3 countries. What happens is the police now comes to the home, and that Black man, typically it's a Black man, but there are Black women as well, ends up dead because of that interaction between that person in crisis, a mental health crisis, and the police, because often police don't know how to de-escalate. Sure. So when we think of George Floyd and all of these deaths that have happened over the years, that's often what it's about. Police come with their perceptions of Black manhood and Black masculinity, and also Black people also fear the police. So that kind of entanglement, that interaction that happens is often problematic. But when Black people, Black men enter psychiatric facilities, those psychiatric facilities actually don't operate as facilities that provide care. They operate, once again, like the prison system, because they're very restrictive, they're aggressive, they're often more hostile to Black men, and they use various approaches, as I said, like over-medication and physical handling, aggressive physical handling, to control Black people within psychiatric facilities.
Before we get too far afield here, let me circle back right quick to where you started your last comments, talking about stereotypes. And there is no naivete here, as I often say. I get that stereotypes are stubborn things. But I want to ask 2 perhaps difficult and challenging questions. I know you can handle it. The first is, after all that we have accomplished, after all that we've done, I quoted Du Bois on this program the other day when he famously said, "Would America have been America without her Negro people? Would America have been America without her Negro people?" Every one of us knows the answer to that is a resounding no. Every one of us also knows if you take Black folk out of the American democratic experiment, it falls flat. There just is no America without us. No debate about that. That's incontrovertible. My question, having said all that, though, is, while stereotypes are, in fact, stubborn things, why, after all of our accomplishment, after all of our grand contributions, why do these stereotypes persist?
I had this conversation with a friend of mine. We talk about the fact that there's, I believe, might sound, I don't know, it might sound that I have heightened fear around these issues, but I really feel there's a project to harm Black people. My friend believes that white people are envious. This is what she says to me. They're envious of Black people, our intelligence and our capabilities. I don't know if I would go that far, but she feels that the efforts that they make to destroy us in many ways has a lot to do with envy. And I would agree that also competition. Black people are seen as competition. So all the things that you mentioned, Matt, when we look at the United States, and all that Black people have accomplished in the United States, and then we think of where they came from as slaves, that shows a level of resilience that I'm pretty sure every other racial group envies. No one has had to endure what Black people have had to endure. And the fact that we've been so resilient and that we've been successful despite all of these issues, I would say that some people might envy that, because we have a unique type of strength. This is what I believe deep down. I'm not sure if I think white people are envious of us, maybe, but I think there's a real project in society, first of all, to make us undermine ourselves and, yes, hate ourselves. And if we hate ourselves and we continue to argue amongst ourselves, then we can never really rise up. And I think white people know this. So I believe there's a real project to do that, to destroy us in many ways, to harm us, to make us hate ourselves. When you hate yourself, there's very little that you can do. There's no place for you to go. So I think white people bank on that, and in many ways, they're successful. You know, because Black people talk all the time about how we need to get together. Imagine if we got together without all the infighting and all the divisions, what we can accomplish, because we've accomplished so much despite the fact that we haven't been able to come together as a group.
Two thoughts that occur to me as you're talking right now. I was in conversation with one of my friends. You mentioned your friend a moment ago. I was in conversation with one of my friends the other day, and I was making a distinction for them between jealousy and envy. Jealousy and envy are not the same thing. Jealousy can be, it isn't always, but jealousy can be rooted in love. So that jealousy and envy are not the same thing. I know that your friend said envious, not jealous. What do you make of that distinction?
Jealousy is rooted in love?
It can be. It can be. If I see my girlfriend out with another guy, I'm not envious. I'm jealous. I'm jealous because that's my girl. So jealousy can be rooted in love. Envy is not. Envy is far more sinister. And I'm fascinated by the fact that your girlfriend said that she thinks that these white folk are not jealous of us, but envious of us. That's a lot more sinister.
Yeah, because then the project is to harm us. Because
right. Exactly.
If we can, and Black people are known for resistance activities. Look at the civil rights era.
Right.
Like many other racialized communities in the United States are doing what they're doing on the backs of African Americans. I don't know if they know that. And that's because it's African Americans who engage in resistance activities. And knowing that we can rise up any time, that we've done that throughout history, is scary, I believe, for white people. So once again, I do think the project is to keep us down, and the way to do that, and that has a lot to do with, yes, envy, perhaps, of our contributions, of I really believe our resilience, and also fear that we can rise up at any time, unlike other racialized groups. So the project to keep us down, I think, is real and is kind of rooted in all of that.
That circles me back to your use of the phrase earlier, noble savages. I'm fascinated by your friend's use again of the word envy, in part because if you see a particular group of people as noble savages, then there's really nothing to be envious of. Does that make sense to you?
No.
Okay, let me try it again then.
Yeah.
If I regard you as a savage, that is beneath me. That is subhuman. What would I be envious of if I saw you as a noble savage? So I'm not suggesting your friend is wrong. I'm just trying to work my way through this, because if you believe, as you suggested earlier, that the other communities, the white community in particular, sees us as noble savages, I'm not sure I get the link then to why they're envious of us.
Yeah, so I disagree with my friend. We have arguments about this all the time. I said, I really don't think white people are envious of us, but I don't think they're envious of us because certainly they think we are inferior, and maybe they don't, but they think we are inferior intellectually in every other way. But I do think that they envy our resilience. Okay. Right? That I think they do. I think, we're seen as certainly strong people, and that's a stereotype, and that could be a harmful stereotype, but I suppose we are resilient because we keep coming back, we keep fighting, and we keep succeeding despite all the challenges that we have. So I disagree with my friend in terms of envious, in terms of, she thinks they're envious of our looks, our appearance. That's why they get butt implants, and they're envious of our intelligence. And I say to her all the time, I said, the white people say so much about our lack of intelligence and how inferior that we are, that I really don't think they're envious, but I do think the strength that we have, that they keep talking about, and of course Black people keep talking about, that we're strong people, I think that's what they're envious about, truly. Because when you have resilience, you can go anywhere. And we have, as Black people.
Yeah. See, my read of this is that, and I hate to say this because I didn't always believe this, but the older I get or the more chronologically gifted I become, I start to believe this more and more. And that is that too many people outside of the Black community just don't have a pathway to understand, to appreciate, to revel, to respect, to honor the humanity and the dignity of Black people. I just think it's it's just that fundamental, that basic for me. There's a fundamental lack of disrespect, an inability to embrace the humanity and the dignity of Black people. That is what I think precludes that empathy. That's how I see it. How do you see it?
Agree. I want to ask you a question though. Why do you think there's a refusal to respect our humanity?
I think that, and now I'm circling back to your point, because I think that for time eternal, they have seen us as inferior. Your phrase was noble savages.
Yeah.
And if that's where you start, you can't get from there to here. You can't start out wrong, to quote my big mama, and end up right.
Yeah. But for other racialized groups, seeing us as inferior is something that they've learned from white people, right?
Yeah.
But I also think that other groups see our resilience, right? So I think it's a mixed bag. I think certainly people have learned to see us as inferior. Media is extremely powerful, and that's where people get their messages and understandings of Black people and Black life.
Yeah.
But I also think that people see us as very strong. Black people, we see ourselves as strong. Once again, it's a rallying cry for Black people and Black women who say, I'm a strong Black I talk about this in my book, Black women who talk about I'm a strong Black woman. But when you're seen as a strong Black woman, the healthcare system and the mental health care system does not afford you any empathy,
That's
right? So they don't think they have to deal with you. And Black men, certainly Black masculinity is tied up in notions of Black strength, hyper masculinity and hypersexuality. So people don't feel they have to care about you. But what I think every single racial group has noticed about Black people is that we are resilient and strong. I think that's what they would say, and I think that's what they may envy.
I wholeheartedly agree with you on that notion of Black women being strong. This notion of a strong Black woman is what undergirds the conversations about Black maternal health. That's exactly why we have that conversation. There's a link between those two things. I don't need to convince you of that. You already know that. Speaking of links, though, I do want to ask you to tell me more, Dr. Waldron, about the link between racial discrimination and mental health.
Yeah, so this is, what I refer to in the book, and others have referred to, of course, as racial trauma. While Black people understand this intimately, I still feel that health professionals and mental health professionals don't get it. They don't often see racism as traumatic. They don't see racism as a mental health issue. So the point I'm making in the book is that the experiences that Black people have within every single social structure leads to mental health challenges. Mental illness is one thing. Clinical depression where you can't get out of your bed, that's clinical, and that's sometimes difficult to change. But then there are also mental health and emotional struggles that Black people have when they have experiences within healthcare, within employment, within labor, within the criminal justice system, that has an impact on their well-being, on their mental well-being. So in the book, what I do is I look at many of those social structures: education, criminal justice, healthcare workforce, healthcare system in general, mental health policy, et cetera, and talk about the ways in which policy is rooted within those social structures, and how policymakers develop policies that either harm or exclude, and exclusion is harm, Black populations, right? They don't figure into, for example, mental health policy. And when they don't figure into mental health policy, then they're forgotten and their needs aren't taken care of. So it's really about the structural, what we call structural inequities. And for health professionals, the structural determinants of health. Health professionals love to talk about the structural determinants of health, but conveniently, they often forget to include racism as part of that. So I'm trying to draw this line in the book between all of the inequities, the racism, the oppressions that we face within all of our social structures, and the impacts on our well-being, our mental well-being on the ground.
The book is called From the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter, Tracing the Impacts of Racial Trauma in Black Communities, from the colonial era to the present. When we come forward, we'll talk about black men as we approach the 5th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd, May 25th of this month. 25th of this month, I should say. We'll talk about black men, we'll talk about black women, and we'll talk about the black babies and whether or not they are susceptible to getting caught up in this particular and sad frame as well. Our guest is the author of that book, Dr. Ingrid Waldron. More with her when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Tensions flared outside of a Grand Rapids, Michigan courthouse as protesters clashed during jury deliberations in the trial of ex-officer Christopher Shore, charged with killing a black man, Patrick Lyoya.
I think that they are really weighing the options and the facts, and I really, truly hope that they come up with something soon.
The jury is deadlocked, but was told to keep trying. One person was arrested. Jurors are in deliberations today in the Tyre Nichols murder trial. 3 former Memphis officers are charged with beating him to death back in 2023. That was caught on video. None of the former officers testified. And a Lending Tree survey shows 77% of parents say raising kids is more expensive than expected, with nearly half having fewer children due to costs. The average cost to raise a child now is nearly $300,000, up 36% in 2 years. A $5,000 baby bonus is reportedly under consideration. Get BIN News Now, on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice. Continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
The Crohn's and Colitis Foundation has been at the forefront of inflammatory bowel disease research and care for over 50 years. Learn more about research, education, and support at Crohn'sColitisFoundation.org.
Is this the title? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Another date for Lakers Nation to circle on your calendar. August 2nd is the day Luka Doncic becomes eligible to sign a 4-year extension worth $229 million. The Lakers are not obligated to give Doncic an extension. Doncic has 1 year left on his current contract that averages $53.7 million. The Lakers might want to see how Doncic is handling his offseason conditioning program before agreeing to give him an extension. One of the reasons Doncic is with the Lakers is because the Dallas Mavericks did not feel comfortable giving Doncic a super max extension worth $345 million. If Doncic was still with Dallas, he would have been eligible for that deal on August 2nd. Interesting development in the NBA playoffs. The road teams are 5-0 in the second round of the playoffs. Indiana, New York, Denver, and Golden State started their second round series with road wins. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
All I need is one mic. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. With so many shows on our station weekdays and weekends, it's hard for me to keep track of all the guests who are actually in studio on any given day. I wish I'd known in advance that LADA Nathan Hochman was coming in studio for a recent interview. Had I known, I would have loved to have personally greeted him and then asked him why LA City Council member Karen Price is being criminally prosecuted for allegations of misconduct similar to the conflict of interest violations for which former City Council member Kevin De Leon is only being fined. What's that about, Mr. DA? In fairness to Mr. Hochman, it was former DA George Gascon who actually filed felony charges against Councilman Price. I opined then on how these criminal charges against Price did not pass the smell test. I was concerned then that this was yet another wayward prosecution of a high-profile black elected, not to mention a waste of taxpayer money. I am even more convinced now that this is a hot mess. To be clear,
Neither you or I want a bunch of self-serving, greedy, conflict of interest criminals managing the people's business inside LA City Hall. But we also don't want selective or targeted prosecution of black politicians. We've seen that movie before, and we don't need a sequel. It's hard to watch Kevin De Leon get away with paying an $18,000 fine for repeated ethics violations, what he calls an oversight, and at the same time, watch the DA's office continue its criminal prosecution of Kern Price for issues allegedly involving his wife's clients. Motions, I might add, that were passed unanimously by the LA City Councilman. What are you saying, Tavis? I'm glad you asked. D.A. Hochman did not start this inquisition, but he certainly has the power to stop it. I have said it before, and I will say it again. Fundamental fairness. In the absence of fundamental fairness, we experience a cascade of deteriorating conditions. The erosion of trust, the weakening of social cohesion, alienation, marginalization, the legitimacy of authority diminishes, cynicism and disengagement grow, and ultimately, people abandon civic participation altogether. Fundamental fairness, Mr. Hochman, that's all we ask. With a KBLA Talk 1580 editorial, I'm Tavis Smiley. As always, we welcome your feedback.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with the author of the provocative new book. It's called From the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter, tracing the impacts of racial trauma in black communities from the colonial era to the present. You'll be happy to know, Dr. Waldron, that this conversation has hit a nerve.
Oh.
The comments are all over the place. I want to read a couple of them. People are tapping in from everywhere across the country. Let me read this first. Tavis, she is right. More to the point, her friend is correct. White ignorance is envious of the excellence of black brilliance, innovation, and black physical beauty and strength itself. I have seen it since kindergarten in the South, in the blended black and white public classrooms I was so privileged to be a part of. It was true 400 years ago, and it is true today, sadly, in white stupid supremacy 2.0. Dr. Waldron's friend is correct, and that person happens to be a white male, interestingly. Another comment. The word, Tavis, is threatened. Threatened. White people are threatened by the success of black people, their intelligence, their resilience, which proves their superiority theory wrong. So the word is threatened. Two comments.
Yes.
Anything you want to say, Dr. Waldron, before I move forward?
Threatened is the right word. That's, when my friend and I argue, I say I think they're threatened. I think they're fearful. I think there's some anxiety around us because we're so resilient, because we engage in resistance activity. Threaten is perfect. And I will tell my friend that this person agrees with her. I mean, maybe there's some truth to that. I mean, my friend actually thinks that there's something genetic within white people that causes them to do what they do to black people. Now, that's a bit far, but she does believe that there's something genetic that allows them after in every generation to harm us in the way that we do. And
I'm sorry. See, the genetic thing I can't buy, and I don't mean to proselytize here. I ain't mad at your friend. I ain't mad at your friend, but at the end of the day, I can't buy the genetic argument because God made all of us. So that's my Christology kicks in at this level of the conversation. My Christology kicks in, and if God made all of us, I don't think God made any mistakes, and I don't think it's genetic. I think racism is learned, and because it is learned, it can be unlearned. But I'm not letting them off the hook. Plus, the other way to look at it is this: if it were genetic, we'd have to let them off the hook. if it were genetic, there's nothing they can do about it. It's just in their DNA. So I ain't letting these good white folk off the hook like that. So I'm not buying. Right.
I like that.
Yeah, I'm not buying the genetic argument. I'm sorry. Maybe a little envy, maybe some jealousy, maybe threatened. I love that word. That is the word. You and I agree.
She says genetic. You know why she says genetics?
Tell me
because
why.
She thinks it's really strange that in every generation they continue to harm us in the way they do, and she can't make sense of it.
Yeah,
she thinks it's genetic.
That's because it's passed down from one generation to the next. That's why it's just passed down. That doesn't mean it's genetic. It's just learned behavior. That's my point.
That's right.
But I digress in that regard. As I said a moment ago, I want to talk about men, about women, and our precious black babies. Let me start with the babies. To what extent are even our youngest fellow citizens, our youngest babies in our community, susceptible to this link between discrimination and their mental health?
Extremely susceptible. I mean, I was born in Canada. I'm a Black Canadian. And, as a young child, I was beaten up by boys on the playground, had my head pushed into snow. My sisters had the same, physical abuse and emotional abuse, being called the N-word. I know people think Canada is nice, but this happened to Black children. So as I say to people, I learned very early on that I was hated, and I knew exactly why I was hated. I was hated because I was Black. So as a Canadian, as an African American, you grow up knowing that you're not liked and that you're hated. And for me, mental illness is not simply about having, mental health struggles that are genetic or hereditary. It's about also how we see ourselves as Black people. I put that in the category of kind of racial trauma. I guess I should say racial trauma, that when we witness ourselves in the media, we witness ourselves in popular culture as people who are seen as negative, of people who are disliked. We get those messages very powerfully from our media. We come to learn very quickly as young children that we are hated and that we are seen as inferior by the other people. And of course we internalize that. Yeah. Of course we internalize that. So for me, racial trauma is not just about mental illness. It's about the internalization that happens with Black people when we internalize images of ourselves and understandings of Black people as negative.
What is to be what is to be done, Dr. Waldron? What is to be done about that internalized white supremacy, if I can put it that way?
Well, I think a lot of it is also in the home. Despite the experiences that I had on the playground, I had positive messages from my parents. There was always an expectation in my home that we would go to university. So that was something that we constantly talked about around the dinner table. I got positive affirmations from my parents, and every now and then I got positive affirmations from white professors. There was one white professor who took a shine to me, and students would say, "Ingrid, you're Mrs. Pettipiece's pet." Her name was Mrs. Pettipiece. So every now and then, so people saw me as some professors saw me as bright. So I think a lot of it is affirmations by parents. And I also think that, I had a very interesting experience. I was born in Canada, but then when I was 10, I went to Trinidad, which is where my parents were from. So I lived for 5 years in Trinidad in a society where I saw Black successful people. My teachers were Black, the president, we had both president and a prime minister. Sure. They were both Black. And I think if that hadn't happened, and if my parents didn't take me to Trinidad, I would be in the Canadian school system talking in the same way as some other Black Canadian adults talk about in terms of the experiences they had in high school that were negative, racist. Teachers, when they talk about this, I can't understand it. And then I say to myself, oh yeah, I spent 5 years in Trinidad where I wasn't getting those negative messages. I had teachers who looked like me. And that's extremely powerful.
Yeah.
So for African Americans, people in England who grow up in, these Western societies, they were born in these Western societies, they never had a chance to go to a Black dominant society. I also think it's extremely hard to have those affirmative messages seek in, because you're not going to get it from society. So the only place you can get it is from your home.
Yeah.
Of course, we talk about EDI today, and that relies on kind or benevolent white teachers to do that work. And many of them are not going to do that work.
Yeah.
And now, as we see in the United States, they're dismantling those EDI initiatives. So I really think it goes back to the home. You can be from a low-income Black family, but if your parents are communicating positive affirmations, letting you know that you can do anything that you want to do, and they're doing that frequently, I think that's powerful.
No, there's no question that DEI is under attack in this country in ways that it never has been, but that's to be expected in Trump 2.0. And I just want to just double click what you said a moment ago about that white teacher that your students teased you about being her pet. Lest we indict all the good white people, let me just say as well that some of the biggest supporters I've ever had in my educational career have been white. I still think and talk about her all the time. Mrs. Vera Graff, my second grade teacher, was the first person to tell me I was as gifted as anybody else in that classroom. So I think of Mrs. Graff in second grade. I think of Mrs. Pappas in the fourth grade, Mr. Jackson in the fifth grade. I think of Ms. Moody in the seventh grade. I think of Dr. Otis and Mr. Beal in high school. These are all white teachers that I had throughout my formal learning experience. And those persons have encouraged me and supported me as much as anybody. So this is not about demonizing the entire race of white people. Never mind the fact that there is a lack of empathy writ large, as Dr. Waldron established earlier, for Black people. We're pushing toward the commemoration of the 5th anniversary of the murder of George Floyd. That's one of the reasons for this conversation. That is on May 25th. 5 years, believe it or not, since the murder of George Floyd. And so there are questions to be asked about the ways in which Black bodies are perceived or misperceived and still maltreated even now. We'll get, when we come forward, to the point that she made earlier, Dr. Waldron, that is, about the continuing misdiagnosis and overdiagnosis, particularly of African-American males like George Floyd. We'll talk about that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Generous listening.
Charitable listening.
It's why everybody wants to talk to Tavis. The conversation continues when we come forward.
We asked seniors how to prevent Medicare scams.
My best advice, if you get a phone call, do not talk to the person. These people are well-trained. Don't talk to them.
They don't know me. They're just trying to scam me.
Don't be fooled. Hang up. Just hang up.
Never give out your Medicare number.
They're going to get your number to put in a false claim.
If I get a call from someone, I don't pick up the phone. And should I pick up the phone and they ask for information, then I hang up.
How do you detect Medicare fraud?
Just like I check my credit card statements, I check my Medicare statements monthly.
Scammers can get a hold of your number, order medical devices through your account, and you're not even going to know about it if you don't look at your statement.
Check your statement every month.
If you get your statement and you see something that you know you did not have done, you report it.
Call your Senior Medicare Patrol.
To report Medicare fraud, call the Senior Medicare Patrol at 855-613-7080.
BET and PBS, the Tom Joyner Morning Show, and NPR, the cover of Jet and the cover of Time. #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list, 20 honorary doctorate degrees, a dozen NAACP Image Awards, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a Presidential Lifetime Achievement Award. From talk shows to talk radio, nobody's ever done it better. You like that? This is Tavis Smiley. If you missed our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall, the Altadena Eden Fire, 100 Days and Counting, you missed an evening of reverence, reflection, and reality.
You gotta live in the reality, because this is it. Every day, you wake up, is this my life? Don't stay in denial, because yes, it is. Don't stay in bargaining, where you're praying for a miracle, and if it wouldn't have happened, then this is what I would have done. It did.
Our panel participants kept it real. really real.
I think, number one, it's amazing to me how we ignore systemic racism in our community, and as a people, we've apologized for so much, but when will we stop apologizing for what we have paid for? Because the truth of the matter is we paid for this.
You can always count on KBLA Talk 1580 to give it to you straight, no chaser. When you love folk, you tell them the truth. Seeking the truth, speaking the truth. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Robinhood Gold members can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on annual retirement contributions. With Robinhood Gold, the perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive a 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Robinhood Financial LLC member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Dr. Ingrid R.G. Waldron. The new book is called From the Enslavement to Black Lives Matter, Tracing the Impacts of Social Trauma, Racial Trauma, that is. Let me try that again, Tavis. From the Enslavement. Okay, let me try. Slow down. Thank you. Woosah. From the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter. It's a long title. From the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter, Tracing the Impacts of Racial Trauma in Black Communities from the Colonial Era to the Present. I did it. That's the name of the book. The author is our guest in this hour, Dr. Ingrid Waldron. As I mentioned ago, delighted to have her on. And what a spirited conversation, an insightful conversation. You can spell that any way you want to spell it. An insightful conversation this has been. I want to push right quick toward this notion of misdiagnosis and overdiagnosis. I'm still noodling, and I suspect I will be for the rest of this day and maybe a couple of days with such a powerful phrase that you used earlier in this conversation, that we were deemed, certainly during the Enlightenment period, as too uncivilized to even have mental illness. We were seen as too uncivilized, too unsophisticated to even have mental illness, and yet that has not stopped these the industry, the healthcare industry, from misdiagnosing and overdiagnosing primarily African-American men. Why does that persist, Dr. Waldron?
Well, there's a term called the racialization of psychiatric diagnosis by Suman Fernando. Unfortunately, he died early this year, but he was in his 90s. He's a British Sri Lankan psychiatrist scholar who coined the term the racialization of psychiatric diagnosis. So what he's saying is that on the one hand, you have images and perceptions of Black men as hostile, aggressive, and to be feared. On the other hand, you have the diagnosis of schizophrenia. Now, schizophrenia is probably seen as the most pathological mental illness that can be applied to anyone. I believe that movie with Jack Nicholson, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Oh, yeah.
He was,
Classic.
I believe he had schizophrenia. So you know that in popular culture, like what you see is schizophrenia. They depict people with schizophrenia as extremely harmful, violent, which is actually not true.
Yeah.
So you've got on the one hand Black men who are seen as violent, pathological, hostile, aggressive, to be feared. On the other hand, you have schizophrenia, hostile, pathological, to be feared, violent, and there's this collision that happens between the perception of the Black male body, the perception of schizophrenia, a collision.
Yeah.
In the diagnosing of Black men, where these two images, one about schizophrenia, one about Black manhood, comes together in that diagnostic process, resulting in, I would say, the overdiagnosis and in many cases misdiagnosis of Black men. So what Suman Fernando says, which I totally agree with, is that mental illness, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, but mental illness is a bit of a social construction. Labeling is something that I personally have problems with, because the labeling often is imbued with many of the stereotypes that I talked about, right? So
hold that thought 1 second. When we come forward, my clock is ticking. When we come forward, I want you to unpack that labeling term that you're referencing right now. And I got one other question before we wrap this conversation, this amazing, brilliant conversation with Dr. Ingrid Waldron on Tavis Smiley.
Why does Tavis say, when we come forward? Because he's not going back. And you don't have to go back either. Forward ever, backward never. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach? Transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal? Prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey there, Los Angeles. This is James Lucky Jr., publisher and editor of Los Angeles News Observer. Are you hungry for news that matters to you in the African-American communities of Los Angeles? Well, buckle up, because we got the scoop you've been craving. Stay in the know and never miss a beat with our free weekly publications conveniently available near you. Or hop on the digital wave and become an exclusive subscriber at OGNSC.com. Don't forget to join the party on Instagram and Twitter at OGNSCINC for behind-the-scenes access and sizzling updates. No more FOMO. Let's stay informed, connected, and empowered together.
Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, you know to check that your seats aren't in the visitor section first, before buying tickets.
I'm so excited for this game. I can't believe you got us tickets.
Me too. Wait, are we on the wrong side?
Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds.
This is going to be a long game.
You're in good hands with Allstate.
Savings vary, subject to terms, conditions, and availability. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates, Northbrook, Illinois.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
Dr. Waldron, I got a really tight 3 minutes here. Unpack that labeling term you referenced, and I've got a quick exit question.
Labeling is problematic because I believe it's socially constructed. You label, first you label people and then you apply a diagnosis. The labeling is influenced by how you see people and how you see racial groups. Psychiatrists have this handbook called the DSM. Right? It helps them to diagnose and assess people. And they update it every few years. But for me, labeling is problematic because I know very well that the ways in which we see Black people, the ways in which we see Black men inform that labeling. And for me, that's dangerous. Once again, as I said, some mental illness will follow you throughout your life. And that's particularly problematic if you're looking for a job, you're looking for work. Labeling is the domain of psychiatry. It's something that they have to do. They've got that handbook to help them. But what we've seen and what we've been talking about today is the fact that those negative labels, those negative stereotypes of Black people, Black men and Black women, seep into psychiatric diagnosis and are ultimately harmful because then they shape how psychiatry, the mental health system treats Black people or don't treat Black people, right? Because a lot of Black people don't get care and they're hesitant to access mental health services because of problematic, negative experiences that they have. They don't go back.
I got 45 seconds, Dr. Waldron. Work with me here. George Floyd. It'll be 5 years on May 25th. Are we forever going to see these kinds of incidents where police just maltreat black men?
Weren't we hopeful then? Here in Canada, everybody was talking about EDI, and this is, I had students saying, I think this is it. I think this is going to work, Ingrid. I think things are going to get better now. And now we see they haven't, because years after we continue to see black men killed at the hands of police. I don't know what it will take. I really don't. What I would say is that, and I think everybody knows this, and I hate to say it, black men are the most hated and feared individuals in our society, and I believe that they're seen as competition. In this patriarchal society where white men are on top, black men will continue to be competition and a threat. But there's definitely a project to dehumanize black men, and as long as there's that project, we're going to continue to see, unfortunately, black people die at the hands of police.
The book is called From the Enlightenment to Black Lives Matter, tracing the impacts of racial trauma in black communities from the colonial era to the present. The author of that book has been our guest. What an insightful conversation. Again, this has been Ingrid R.G. Waldron. Professor Waldron, good to have you on. Congrats on the text. Thank you for your time.
It was a pleasure.
Just like that, 3 hours gone. Back here tomorrow, Lord willing, to do it all over again. Until tomorrow, thanks for tuning in to Tavis Smiley. And as always, keep the faith.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Bree Wood with BIN News Now. Tensions flared outside of a Grand Rapids, Michigan courthouse